Hello my friends, this is Dr. Amos here to support your journey with intermediate microeconomics, and I'm going to pick up where I left you last time, and that was deriving demand curves graphically. So you see we are massaging those economic trade-offs that help us to explain behavioral choices that people face on a regular basis, every single day, every single moment in their lives. So now I want to go to next presentation slide, and that would be related to angle curves. Angle curves essentially allow you to measure and track how the economic trade-offs are changing, in this case good X versus good Y, as you increase income. If you recall from the previous discussions, increasing income is equivalent to shifting the budget constraint. What you see on the slide is the parallel shift of the budget constraint into the direction of northeast. And thus, when your budget constraint increases, whether because you get a Christmas gift from your relatives, or because the welfare recipients get their check in the mail, or some other reasons, you essentially have a larger opportunity set to spend between X and Y. And thus angle curves tracking your consumption bundles as your income increases specifically. All right, so the next one is going to be expansion income consumption path. In expansion income consumption path basically is this orange line that allows you to connect all those points. What you see on the slide is the case of normal goods. So as income goes up and your budget constraint increases, your opportunity set enlarged. And thus, each consumption bundle that represents the point of tangency of indifference curve to each associated budget constraint is income consumption path, indeed. And the same way, when budget constraint contracts, it moves back to the origin, and you have a small opportunity set, such as when people getting ill, for example. You know, they can do few things around, and thus the opportunity set becomes smaller. Does it mean that they don't consume anything? Of course it does not, but their consumption may change in terms of what type of food they choose, how much they spend time on the computer, watching television, type of the programs they watch, and so forth. So all those consumption bundles, when they're connected, in the event when the budget shifts outward or inward, is called angle curve or income consumption path. Now we can reconcile this with elasticity. You are an expert now to apply elasticity, and in this case I am choosing to consider three different options. As budget constraint shifts outward, you can move from one point to the second point, or from one to the third, or from one to the fourth. What constituting this move is the classification of good Y in relationship to good X. Remember when we talked about that goods are interrelated, and when someone is buying a Toyota car, they choose to buy a Toyota car in light of other options available, such as Honda, such as Ford, and many other makes of different cars. So Toyota is not purchased independently. That's the take a waypoint, nothing that we buy independently from all other goods, but just the opposite. We buy items, we import items into our lives actually in consideration of other goods and their relationship to those goods as well. So elasticity in this case will show you how income consumption path is changing its slope as you move from point 1 to point 2 to point 3 to point 4, or any other point on a new budget constraint for that matter. One question that you can ask here that would be very interesting is, at what point income elasticity for X is equal to 0? Can you show that on the graph? That's a very interesting question. So can you show me income consumption path as you move from point 1 of the original budget constraint tangent to indifference curve, and you move towards new budget constraint, and you find a point where elasticity for X is equal to 0. That would be very cool. So if you want to stop this video and think about this question, I think you will benefit immensely, and I will just quickly show you how it looks on the graph. So in this case, we have good Y versus good X, and we start at point 1, and then for whatever reason your budget constraint expanding, maybe because you got a good job or maybe a promotion. And in order to answer this question, where are you going to be when elasticity for X, and elasticity for X is percentage change of X divided by percentage change for price for X is equal to 0. That's the point that you are looking for. So in this case, it basically implies that consumption of X does not change as your budget moves outward. And you can safely conclude moving from 1 to 2 will demonstrate elasticity of X that is equal to 0. All right, so now we can go back and explore some other topics that are interesting with our analysis. Another property or a piece of information that could be helpful for you to think through those trade-offs, economic trade-offs that we face on a daily basis, including a choice between life and death, between health and greater income, or whatever you may consider, because elasticity is designed to explain the relationship, or measure, I should say, the relationship between any two variables. The interesting part to consider in this case would be the notion of substitutes and complements. Whether you're going to move from 1 to point 2, or from 1 to point 3, or from 1 to point 4, will in part depends upon the type of the relationship of Y and X and other goods. So whether they're substitutes or whether they're complements will constitute the direction of the move and the magnitude, especially the degree of substitution or degree of complementary relationship, because some goods are more substitutable than others. For instance, if my car takes premium gasoline, can I use a cheaper gasoline? Probably, without major impact on my car. But they're not the perfect substitutes. Will it allow my car to move? Yes. But the premium gasoline will probably serve better to the car that is designed for such consumption. So you see, there's the degree of substitution can vary substantially, and that will determine the direction of the move from original budget constraint to the new one and the magnitude. Now we are moving towards more complicated topic that people find at times very confusing. And this one is going to be, how do we value the price change? How do we value the price change? Because people respond to prices. We talked about companies watch the prices and how they respond to prices. We talked about, to a large extent, how individuals respond to prices. So we face prices at the marketplace every single day of our lives, and we certainly respond to such prices. So how do we tackle the problem? Because we want to understand perception, what value living organisms play when there is this change in the value of price. Because the change of price may introduce different value that we play with. For instance, when they change the price for coffee, someone may value coffee more in the morning versus at night. The same product, price has changed, but our value, perceived value, is different to the product. So I want you to disengage those two. The value that we place and the price that is associated with the product at the marketplace are not the same thing. All right, so let's look hypothetically at this example in front of you. You have price and quantity, and let's talk about gasoline consumption. If price for gasoline consumption used to be $2.50, then consumers respond by consuming Q1 or ended up at point B on the demand curve. And once the price climbs to nearly $4 or $3.98, then people find substitutes. Maybe they choose to live closer to their work. Maybe they choose to work out of home more days during a week, whatever it is. But they're saving resources on gasoline consumption. And thus they're ending up at point A. Here's the two fundamentally different questions that we want to answer at the end of the day. And listen to those two questions carefully, and I will hopefully be able to answer with your support. How much would you pay to have the price for gasoline come down from 3.98 to 2.50? Remember, I talked about that the change in price and the value we place upon this change is not the same thing. Or stated differently, what is this price change worth to you? Now, here's the second question. And it's a different question, my friends. How much are you willing to pay to prevent the price from rising from $2.50 to $3.98? One more time. The first question is, how much are you willing to pay to see or experience the price decline from $3.98 to $2.50? And the second question is how much are you willing to pay to prevent the price from rising from 250 to 398. Those are two different questions, and they demand economic analysis. So what I want to do now, I would like to stop at this moment, and when we come back, we'll talk about substitution and income effect. And that's the direction we'll take in order to understand how people respond to those two fundamentally different questions. Thank you, my friends, for your time.